And welcome to another Tip Tuesday, family. All right, I'm excited to be here. Today, we're going to be doing a more nuanced look into sugar alcohols and other natural forms of sweeteners. Now, uh, low carb space, dieting space in general. That's the one thing I can say that, like keto, paleo, if it fits your macros, all those dieting ideas, all of them have this one thing in common. They love zero caloric sweeteners because they don't impact calories. And for keto people, they don't impact carbs or calories. So it's actually one thing we all have in common. We all love sweeteners because they help with avoiding sugar, which for some people it's because they don't want the blood sugar spike. Other people, they don't want the excess calories. But we all share that common thread. We all like zero caloric sweeteners. So the real question is what's good, what's bad? Now, there's two things that I want to say at the beginning and I want to say at the end. Firstly, most sweeteners, if they are had occasionally, like you go out and you have a sweetener, it's not going to be the end of your day unless you have some kind of. Some people have like a headache reaction to aspartame just due to genetics and other factors. Some people have bloating from sugar alcohols. Obviously, if that's you, avoid them, right? No reason to make yourself feel bad. But if you have no digestive negative repercussions to it, having it occasionally is not going to hurt you. Second point, there is no excuse to chronically eat sweeteners and sugars because most people that are doing that are not dealing with the actual issue, which is that they're addicted to sweet tasting things, right? And that comes from somebody that if I'm not careful, I will get a Diet Coke addiction. I will get a syrup flavoring addiction because I have a sweet tooth. And so even I'm saying that not just to y'all, but I'm saying that to myself as well. Like we have to be mindful of that just because it has 0 calories doesn't mean that it can be done in excess. Because at the end of the day, as you'll see, the dosage is in the poison, or the poison's in the dosage. Yeah, poison's in the dosage, right? So it's important to understand that when we're talking about sweeteners. Now, obviously, people talk about like natural versus synthetic or sugar alcohols or artificial sweeteners. People argue that even though sugar alcohols are found naturally in the environment, right? Like for example, maple syrup is 4% allulose. Most people don't know that. Erythritol is found in fruit. So things like that. But generally, allulose and erythritol are both curated from corn nowadays. I don't. The studies that I'm going to show y'all they use allulose and erythritol made from corn. So I think that gives us a good idea of exactly if this is bad or good. Um, and then obviously artificial sweeteners, they're not natural. They're not God sweeteners. We should avoid them. Um, I can understand that thought process, and if that's you, that's cool. I think 90% of the time I hold that same value, but I think occasionally, again, I don't, again, going back to that first rule point I made, occasionally you're going to be fine. I don't want anybody here, and this is why, psychologically, not to get off on another subject, but if you tell yourself that this thing is bad, it's going to send you down a spiral, then every time you have it, it's going to send you down a spiral. But if you tell yourself, hey, I'm on a cruise, I'm on vacation, I can have one Coke, Sprite Zero, I don't know, whatever, and you have one. It's not going to be the end of the world. But you can allow yourself to have that thing and then move on with your life and eat good food, eat good quality food, work out, be active. You're good. You're fine. You're fine. Okay. So I think it's an important thing to preface, but it also shouldn't be an overconsumption. No, you should not overconsume anything that is, when I say synthetic, I don't mean synthetic as in, because obviously stevia is not necessarily synthetic, but if you're like adding sweetness to something that's not naturally sweet, you should never overindulge in that. Never should overindulge in that because our human bodies crave sweetness because before the Industrial Revolution and the amount of access we have, finding something sweet was rare. You'd only find it late spring, early summer, and then the rest of the year you didn't get access to anything sweet except for honey if you got lucky, or if you jarred or canned things, preserved things, and you usually had to spread that out so that your family could eat all. The point is, we have an overabundance of access to it, so we have to be mindful. We have to find other ways to control ourselves because nature's not controlling it for us, right? Okay, so first thing we're going to look at is stevia. Now, as y'all know, stevia is a leaf, or if you don't know, stevia is a leaf. Generally, people don't. You can buy it. You can buy it as a leaf. I have bought it as an actual leaf. You can add it to tea and steep it with tea, and it naturally sweetens your tea, so you don't have to add sweetener to your tea. You can actually add it to homemade pickles and make bread and butter pickles that are zero sugar. There's a lot of cool methods to use natural stevia. Most people, though, however, generally use stevia extract, which is usually processed stevia leaf that they use alcohol to concentrate and extract the sweetness of the leaf, and then they discard the rest, and so you get this over-concentrated, very, very sweet um, item. Okay. And then other people will take that extract and they will cut it with maltodextrin and dextrose to make it more like sugar in terms of volume. Because 1 teaspoon of or a quarter teaspoon of stevia is as sweet as like a half cup of sugar, right? It's very, very powerful. And so they cut it so that you can use it to make baked goods, things like that, right? They try to make it available for things like that. But the thing is that maltodextrin and dextrose are in some ways very much like sugar. And so if you're doing stevia in the raw, for example, which is a great brand, it's not stevia in the raw. Honestly, I think they should be sued for that label because I think that's so illegal because it's not stevia in the raw because it's stevia with dextrose. It's not stevia in the raw whatsoever. If it's stevia in the raw, it'd be ground up green powder. Really, truly, if it was truly stevia in the raw. Same thing with monk fruit. I have a pack of I don't know. Actually, I might have thrown it away a long time ago. It was old, but I had a monk fruit in the raw. It is a very thin flour-like brown powder. That is monk fruit in the raw. Okay, so understanding that just because it says in the raw, you need to read the labels on these natural sweeteners like monk fruit and stevia. So first, we'll talk about stevia again. Stevia, it's a leaf. Now, when we talk about stevia, a lot of people think good things, but there are some implications from stevia. One of them is infertility issues. Okay. So when this one study from the NCI looked at, sorry, not the NCI, my bad, from PubMed, looked at the effects of chronic administration of stevia in rats. Now, this is really important because I hate when people don't point this out. This was done in rats. Okay. We are not rats. We are mammals. We are not rats. Okay. I don't like it when people say, oh, because it happened to a rat, it's going to happen to you. No, it can make you more aware. It can make you more educated. But unless it's done in a human trial, it's really, really hard to gauge exactly how it's going to impact us. Okay. Now, something to point out. It was conducted on male rats. It was chronic administration for 60 days. Okay. Of Robinia exenis extract. So this is the extract. This isn't the leaf. This is the extract. Okay. Another thing to point out. And it was chronically given to them for 60 days. Okay. So here's what we found. In the final weight, there was a decrease of size of their testes, seminal vesicle, and cauda. I don't know how to pronounce that. Basically, their sex organs shrunk. It literally made their sex organs shrink. Okay. Now, something to point out from this, let's go to the actual study. You got to go to the actual study, people. People don't go to the actual study. Okay. So they're fed 5% from their caloric. Guys, 5% of your calories from stevia is insane. That is an insane amount of stevia. You're talking like for you, that would literally be like drinking a bowl of stevia extract. That's an insane amount of stevia. And we're going to get into this when it comes to aspartame too, because they do this too. They want to see what the extreme is in a lot of these studies. So they over pump these animals with these sweeteners to get a desired outcome or to see if it confirms the hypothesis. Okay. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, what they found was the extract may induce changes in male accessory sex gland and androgenic levels, meaning that there is a chance that um, if you're over consuming stevia, it can impair sexual hormones. That is a plausibility, right? So if you're overdoing stevia and you're noticing you're having lower libido, you're having lower ambition, you're having lower energy for women, lower libido, irritability, you might be having too much stevia. You're putting stevia in everything. You got to be mindful about that. Something that I've done is I've mixed up my sweeteners. Sometimes I use stevia, sometimes I don't, right? Sometimes I use sugar alcohols, whatever that might be. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I'm back. All right. Anyways, that's gonna be an interesting pause in the recording. Okay, so point is that again, if you over so like something I do is I've spread my like I don't use stevia in everything all the time. I mix it up with different sweeteners. Monk fruit, allulose, surculose. We'll get into all that into why in a second. But I don't do just strict stevia anymore. In fact, I probably use stevia once every 2 days or so. And I was using it like 5 or 6 times a day. And I read the study and I was like, ugh, right? So again, you can have it, but do be mindful. You can overdo it. There are chances of overdoing it here. And you might be like, oh, I don't drink a bowl of stevia extract every day, but you can. If you ever, if you're putting 3 squirts and you do 5 coffees a day and then you put it whatever, and then you're like drinking electrolytes that have stevia, and even my reds have stevia in them. If you're doing like reds and then pre-workout, and then you're doing 5 cups of coffee with stevia, and you're having that bar with stevia, it can add up. It can add up. So it's just something to be mindful about when it comes to natural sweeteners. Now, as far as monk fruit goes, there is no negative impacts of monk fruit that we have found thus far. Obviously, we can talk about the psychological implications of sweeteners causing sweet tooths and causing you to want to go back to sweeter foods. But in general, monk fruit has been used by Chinese medicine for years for its antioxidant properties. So, in terms of like no negatives, monk fruit's probably the best one. It really has no, it's the king. It really is. And then you have thaumatin, which is a kama-fe fruit extract, which is a whole nother conversation. But that one also, it's another Chinese medicine herb. There's no signs that it does anything. So monk fruit, if you're gonna like, what's the best sweeteners? Monk fruit is the best. It's peak. Okay. All right. So that's stevia. Now we're gonna get into allulose. Allulose is a magical sweetener. Okay. We'll talk about the pros and cons of this one. So allulose is a natural occurring sweetener. It's found in maple syrup, things like that. It is a natural sweetener, meaning that it is found in nature, but it is also caloric. This is important to note about allulose. Allulose is not calorie free like every other sweetener is. Allulose has 10% of the calories that sugar does. So if you have something with 10 calories worth of sugar in it and you replace it with the allulose the same amount, it's going to have 1 calorie instead of 10. 100 calories of sugar, 10 calories from allulose, right? So it's not calorie free. That's an important thing to note here. It also can cause bloating in some people if they're not used to the microbiome feeding off of it. There can be some digestive changes that happen with allulose, okay? However, allulose by far is one of the best sweeteners to add to your diet if you're going to add a sweetener. Why? Because of its impact on a couple things. GLP-1 increase. It is one of the only natural GLP-1 increasers. Allulose literally is a GLP-1 increaser, a stimulator, right? Kind of like Wegovy and things like that. Obviously, it's not as strong as like a medical drug, but allulose naturally increases GLP-1. It also helps with fatty metabolism. Okay, so in this study, they're evaluating dose-dependent effect of D-allulose on fat mass reduction in adult humans. So this is a randomized, double-blind. This is a study, people. This is a study. This is what we look for. Okay, we're talking about rats and all that. Now this is a good study to look at results on. Okay, so 0 calorie D-allulose. So again, it's not allulose itself is not 0 calorie. D-allulose is kind of like a substrate, but allulose has plenty of D-allulose in it, like what you find in the store or whatever. Has beneficial effects on obesity-related metabolism in mouse models, but only a few studies have been performed on human subjects, right? Therefore, they did a preliminary study with 121 Korean subjects, okay? So here is the fun part of this. Let's go down. Results. I should have had this highlighted already, but I did not. Give me a second. Okay. So there was people that the group that took the allulose changes in body composition, including body weight, BMI, body fat percentage, body fat mass, lean body mass, circumference, waist, and hip. And when you're on a caloric deficit, you're going to lose some lean mass anyways. But here's the real key point. There is a significant change between the group on taking the allulose and the group not when it came to total fat area. Right? The comparison between the two showed a significant decrease in total fat area, right? And when a subcutaneous, so let's talk about visceral fat. D-allulose was observed to have a significant effect, right? Significantly decreased subcutaneous fat area compared to the placebo group. Oh, sorry. Subcutaneous is under the skin. The visceral fat there is not significantly altered. So visceral fat is not significantly altered, but allulose intake does show significant differences when you're in a deficit in the fat under your skin. Your arms, your stomach, your abs, the places that you see visually, right? Like you can't argue with this. This is good stuff, right? So you see this difference, right? So 55 to 40, that's a dude. So look at this. So this deficit, right? The placebo, males, females, 55, 65. That's a huge margin. It's 55 compared to 65 in the placebo. And the low allulose, so even with low allulose, they went down more. They had more of a decrease. That's a huge margin. I don't know if you know how to read studies, but that's a huge margin from baseline. Okay. Negative 21 compared to 0.11. That's wild. Okay. So point is that high allulose doses can lead to lower subcutaneous fat. So when we're talking about adding sweeteners, if you can fit it into your macros, if you're tracking macros, high allulose is the way to go. Adding allulose as a sweetener can show significant changes in body fat mass loss. It's in the research. It's great. Okay. Now, in terms of blood markers, what about blood markers? There was no significant differences. So, as far as we know, allulose, except for gut distress, if that happens to you, allulose has all these crazy benefits compared to other sweeteners, and just in generally being added to your diet. No negative impacts that we've seen thus far, outside of some people having gut issues with it. Right. So, like in terms of like us, again, if you're trying to lose weight, allulose is a great natural GLP-1 increaser. It is a great appetite suppressant. It is a great fat mass reducer, and it doesn't overall impact blood markers or anything like that. So I know I said monk fruit is like the king in terms of zero caloric sweeteners, but in terms of caloric natural sweeteners or sweeteners in general, allulose is like it's like in its own world, right? So you might ask, well, what's the best sweetener to get then? If you're going to be like making something or putting something in your coffee, honestly, Lakanto monk fruit cut with allulose is the best because it's monk fruit cut with allulose. That is that's literally a superfood. I know it's weird to say about a sweetener, but that bag is literally a superfood, right? It's a GLP-1 increaser, it's an appetite stimulator, it's a fat mass loss increaser, and it's an antioxidant powerhouse. It's literally a superfood. Um, I know that's weird to say, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Also, it helps with fatty acid production. And so, like, I know some of my runners that don't want to use carbs at all. They don't want to like PR. They're just trying to like run steady, like using fat. I have them drink electrolytes with allulose added before their runs because it can help with energy production, right? Something y'all can try if you want. But yeah, so that's allulose. Now we're gonna get to the really popular one that's been popular for a long time, erythritol. The reality of erythritol is not as cool as people think it is. Okay. Um, Again, in moderation, it's fine. I've had erythritol for 5 years. I haven't found an issue with it. But in excess, it can have issues on it can increase the risk of cardiovascular events. They're not sure about the exact mechanics about that, but they do understand that there is an association between erythritol and cardiovascular events. People with the highest erythritol levels, top 25%, which again is a lot. But you got to think, it sounds like a lot, but if you're eating like keto muffins for breakfast, and then you're having like erythritol in your coffee, and then you're having some kind of erythritol based drink, and then you're having something else that's keto, which a lot of people eat keto like that nowadays. I'm not saying a lot of you do, but you can. They're twice so 25% of their of their carbohydrate intake, calorie intake coming from erythritol. Um, we're twice as likely to have cardiovascular events over 3 years. Twice. That's wild. It's wild. So again, I don't think most people don't eat that much erythritol. But again, it's one of those sweeteners that it's mindful that there is poison in the dosage when it comes to erythritol. Okay? Now, so that's erythritol. That one's pretty simple. If you have it, like if you see something that you like and it happens to have erythritol in it, if you eat it, it's not going to kill you. It's not something you should overconsume, just like stevia is not something you should overconsume. Allulose is like really the only one, unless it causes gut problems, that you can have it every day, and it only seems to show positive benefits. Okay, artificial sweeteners. Now we're talking like aspartame, sucrose, things like that. Okay. Now, there's some things to understand about artificial sweeteners and cancer. Okay. The biggest one is aspartame. Okay. Now this one we don't even see anymore because it was banned a long time ago. Saccharin has linked it with at high doses with development of bladder cancer in rats. Okay. I'm going to point out a couple things here to really point out some things. High doses, bladder cancer in rats. Okay. Now saccharin was high enough that it was listed in toxology program report and carcinogens, right? And you don't see it in a lot of things because it is pretty sketchy. Now we look at aspartame. Aspartame is a group 2B possible carcinogen to humans, right? It's limited, and that sounds scary. It's limited, but it's not convincing. Now, let me be very clear. I don't think that aspartame is good to have significantly. I don't think it's something that you should have all the time. I don't think if you have, again, like on vacation, I want to Coke Zero. I don't think it's going to kill you, right? I don't think any studies back that up. Something to realize about aspartame studies. A lot of times, the amount of aspartame they give these rats, it's like you'd have to drink like 20 cans of Diet Coke a day for 3 years straight to get the same kind of results in a human. Now, unfortunately, there are people that do that. There are people that drink 20 cans of Diet Coke a day. So yeah, that person's in trouble. But for most of us, one can occasionally is not going to be a big deal. If it helps you with your diet, helps you get through the day, you want something tasty, but you don't want to drink like a sugar-filled thing, totally get it. I'm not going to slap you on the wrist over it. Um, but again, there are some studies that do make it to where you don't want to drink it in excess. A really popular study just came out about heart issues in aspartame. And again, that study was really misleading. Now, animal-based and carnivore people picked it up and ran with it. They ran with it. I don't know if y'all remember that a couple weeks ago, but they just ran with that study. The problem with that study, and again, I'm just unbiased. If it's bad, I want it to be known that it's bad, right? I think that's important. The problem with that study, one, again, they were given so much aspartame. They give these poor freaking rats, dude. It's starting to make me a hippie. They bring them so much aspartame. They also gave it to rats that genetically are prone to heart disease without any influence. This gene of rat is prone to heart disease. And so what happens? They gave them aspartame, a lot of it, and they got heart disease. That's pretty much the study. And so because of that, aspartame is going to kill you. That's silly. It's not good science. Well, the study was good. The way people were flaunting it around, like making aspartame this that basically poison if you even look at it, that's wrong. And again, I'm not saying that you need aspartame ever in your life ever. I'm not even saying it's good for you. I'm just saying that in small quantities, it's not bad for you. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Now, as far as things like sucralose go, there's never been any links between it and cancer or links in heart disease. It's only shown impact in terms of gut, and I was just sharing this earlier before the recording. It's shown an increase in some of the healthy bacterium in your gut that actually help with insulin resistance. So it can actually be argued that it actually helps with insulin resistance. But also on the flip side, surculose usually makes things really sweet, and people tend to have what's called a syphilic insulin response to it. And so if you basically your body pumps insulin assuming sugar's coming, the sugar doesn't come, makes you go hypoglycemic. It causes dysregularity in your blood sugar. So I'm not saying you should drink it all the time either, because I think two things cancel each other out, right? Because if you have a bacteria that's good for insulin resistance, but then you're constantly making your blood sugar dysregulated by pumping a bunch of insulin when it's not needed, I think they cancel each other out. So again, circulose is one of those things you have to be mindful about how much you drink it, right? Like I have a little bit in my coffee sometimes. I don't drink it all day. I don't drink it every day, right? I mix my sweeteners up and I try to be mindful about how often I put sweeteners into my food. If I'm dieting and I'm really trying to lose weight and I'm finding myself getting really hungry, I add allulose to my food and I track the calories on it and the carbs on it, but I know that it's going to help suppress my appetite and it's going to help with fatty acid mobilization, all that jazz. So again, just going back to my two original points. the end of the day, if you have something occasionally, we don't have any studies that make it absolutely 100% true that if you have something occasionally, it's going to hurt you. It's not. It's not. There's been plenty of research done on this. There's no evidence that backs that up. But also at the same time, you should not overconsume even allulose, even though it's a great sweetener, I think. You should not overconsume sweeteners, right? At the end of the day, we have to limit ourselves on sweet stuff because we have access like we've never had before. And so we have to come up with different tools as humans in society to limit ourselves because we're in a place where nature's not doing it for us. We have to be mindful of that. But all in all, that's sweeteners. So I know there's a lot of information. You can comment about it. We can talk about it. But I appreciate your coming, and I'll see you on the next one.